Well, I think the thing they learn more than anything else at the deepest possible level is losing sucks.
Yeah.
you know,
So I want to ask you, just with the Celtics entering this season, a lot of controversy. They sit atop the NBA right now.
hmm
They are, I think, the best team in the league very clearly. Just before the season kicked off, are you shocked just by their success, just in terms of how dominant they are, just compared to their peers in the NBA?
So I guess I could answer that a couple of different ways. I'm not shocked that they are a team that's right there at the moment but I guess I'll phrase it this way. I'm not shocked that they would be at or near the top of the NBA at this stage of the season just because they're so talented, they're so deep. They save for Rob Williams and some tweaks along the way to some other guys. They've generally speaking been healthy. And obviously, they were a team that was 2 wins away from a championship last year. They reached the NBA Finals, so we know what they're capable of. And guys like Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and others have taken just another step, another leap in their progress and their development. So none of that sort of big picture surprises me. I guess if I had to identify something that surprises me a bit, it's that they came out so strong so fast in light of the controversy that you alluded to. And I don't even mean the Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant trade rumors, stuff like that. Like these guys are professionals. You shake that stuff off. Obviously, it's the Ime Udoka stuff. That's
Sure.
the head coach that took them to the NBA Finals last year in a defense-led first system, and really got all of these guys to buy in such a way. Him being on the outs and the distraction, the season long suspension, he's never going to coach this team again. So just him being out of the picture and these guys seemingly not being in contact with him, and enter in Joe Mazzulla, who had never coached above Division II basketball before. He had been on the staff obviously for a few years, and so had relationships in place with the players, but had never been the guy running the bench, sitting there in the front row and pardon me, making the key decisions. And so, that in mind, it's a bit surprising they got out so quickly to the start that they have, and also doing it with offense first before defense. Their identity has flipped a little bit. So, I guess I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit as I, kind of listen to myself as I go. But it's, it's not again. I guess just the quick version. It's not shocking because they're so talented, but it's a little surprising in light of the coaching change that they just haven't missed a beat.
Along with their championship run last year, just the beginning of the season, this time last year, they were off to a slow start. Do you think
Yeah.
the adversity that they experienced last year played a factor into this year? They're more battle tested. They're more ready to handle adversity. Just compared to last year's, is that a factor in their success so far?
I think somewhat. Obviously last year they floundered through. I think people forget. I mean, this team started 25-25. I mean, that's more than halfway through the season before they were virtually, because obviously they did lose, but virtually unbeatable that second half and into the playoffs and reaching the NBA Finals, and such a strong run throughout the playoffs and what was a juggernaut of competition really every single round, from the Nets to the Bucks to the Heat to obviously Steph and the Warriors. So I think they learned a lot from last year. But I think, more so than the adversity of the slow start that they had last season, I think it's the adversity that they experienced in the playoffs and having multiple game sevens and losing in the NBA finals. And, despite multiple trips to the Eastern Conference finals that so many of these guys have experienced, they'd always fallen short previous to last year. And I think falling short in the East finals versus falling short in the NBA finals, not that I can say it from personal experience, but I think that just has to be mentally, emotionally, such a different thing. The analogy that I always kind of label this thing with, it's before they were climbing, they got knocked down, but they kind of see the top of the mountain.
Mhm.
Last year they got to the top of the mountain. They reached the top of the mountain. They just weren't the group that got to actually plant the flag, at the end of the race. So they know what it takes to get there now. And to have that adversity and that anguish and that turmoil of the offseason eat at them the entire time, I think that's as motivating as anything coming into a new season, wanting to really just right from the shoot say, hey, this is us. We were there. We plan to be there again. We have a target on her back. We don't care. Come get us.
And what lessons do you think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown took from going to the NBA Finals? I mean, that I think when players enter that situation for the first time, it changes them, sometimes for the negative, but oftentimes for in a positive way. So during the off season, was there any type, from your insight, was there any type of I don't know, different preparation that they did compared to other seasons? Because they have a target on their back. I mean, they're now an elite team. I
Yeah,
mean, they're they're not in, they're not a dark horse team. They are a favorite to win the
right.
title. So, were there any steps and many measures that not only they took, but along with their teammates before the controversy took place, that they're prepping for this season, knowing that they're going to be kind of the number one target among the other teams in the league?
Well, I think the thing they learned more than anything else at the deepest possible level is losing sucks,
Yeah.
you know? And so to feed off of that, like Jaylen Brown, we saw the videos on social media of the underwater training that he was doing and building stamina and endurance and all of that and his workouts, and Jason Tatum, working out with Durant, working out with some of the others, other stars around the league, and really just continuing his growth as in that sort of superstar celebrity lifestyle. He's hanging out with Kevin Hart and Jay-Z and all these guys, in the off season. And it's, he is obviously as an individual reached another level, another tier in his career where he is one of the faces. He is one of the guys in the NBA. He is arguably a top 5 player in the league now, who is in this moment, as we sit here, a favorite to win most valuable player with the
Yes.
start that he has gotten off to. So these guys are motivated. I keep sort of saying the same thing, but it bears repeating. It's everything stems from what happened last June.
Yeah.
Losing there sets up the despair of the offseason. Tatum talking about not leaving his house for a number of days and barely eating and not wanting to see anyone or talk to anyone. I mean, depression to some degree sets in. Marcus Smart having nightmares, still thinks about it, all these months later. And it's largely the same core that came back, except they added to it. They got Malcolm Brogdon, who in many ways was the piece that was missing. If you look back at what their weaknesses were during the playoffs. Sam Hauser, you're telling me he wouldn't have been helpful? Obviously, if at that point he had any sort of true NBA confidence, which obviously he didn't as a rookie because he didn't get the opportunity. But now, with the blessing in disguise or silver lining or however you want to label it, with Danilo Gallinari going down and that creating this opportunity for Hauser to be a sharpshooter, a microwave off the bench for them, they couldn't have used him in the NBA Finals. Getting
Yeah.
wide open looks from three while the Warriors were bearing down on all the known threats of Tatum, Brown, and so on and so forth. And they're doing all of this without Rob Williams, as we've talked about, who is not only, people want to fixate on the defensive struggles this year, and obviously not having Rob has mattered, and him coming back whenever it is that he does, hopefully sometime before the new year, but who knows, whenever it is that he does come back, he's certainly going to help the defense, but he's also going to help the offense. He's going to help the offense so much, in so many different ways that we've already seen in the years that we've, been blessed to be able to watch him grow and develop in his time in Boston. And so with sort of all of that in mind, it's, this team is very much on the incline. They are storming up that mountain again, with one thing above all else. Tatum's, asked about MVP. Doesn't, I think would be overstating it to say he doesn't care. He would certainly love to win MVP, but it's not the goal. If it
Yeah.
comes along with the goal, great. The goal is banner 18. These
So
guys know, they
yeah.
see, they play under those banners each and every night that they're in Boston. They know that, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, that new big three era going back, what, 14 years now, like that's
Wow.
their legacy. Not that I mean, they would have been Hall of Famers regardless, but their legacy is the fact that they're champions. Tatum, Brown, Smart, all these guys, they want that too, because they know it means something different in Boston, as opposed to being one of these really talented guys that passed through but never won.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I don't want to wish any mental anguish on anybody, but the fact that it torments them
Yeah.
losing the NBA Finals, I think that changes from just being a superstar into being a legend in the league.
It
And
torments me, and I'm a fan.
no, I think I'd be in the same position if I was a Celtics fan. You know, you're exactly right. You mentioned Jason Tatum, his MVP quality season. What are his chances, do you think, of winning it compared to the rest of the players? I mean, I think it's kind of a popularity contest, unfortunately, sometimes. I feel like the best player doesn't actually win MVP in certain years. Do you think if he keeps up the stats, he actually has a real opportunity for the media to vote for him? Or do you think it'll kind of turn into if somebody rises up and has a hot streak the latter half of the season, do you think he could possibly lose out on the MVP?
Well, of course he could lose out. I mean, there are tons of incredibly talented
There are.
players across the NBA, but right now, if we're looking at this basically a quarter of the way through the year, or not quite, but approaching that, he's the favorite. He's the betting favorite. He is the popular choice to be that award winner. But it's not by a landslide.
No,
Luca has had an unbelievable start. Giannis
incredible.
is Giannis, and he's won the award before. Like there are a bunch of guys, or not a bunch realistically, but a few or a handful that are certainly in the conversation. But like Jokic isn't going to win it again, not because he couldn't or because the numbers won't be there or whatever, but it's just to your point about sort of the politics of it. He's not going to win three in a row. It like the voters aren't going to do that. It's just not going to happen. He would have to be so absurdly far and away better than what he was the last couple of years, which was already borderline historic. So that's forget about that. I think Tatum is to your point about it being, you know, popularity to some degree anyway. And I don't think it's all the way that the numbers, the evidence has to be there, the team
Of
success has
course.
to be there. But Tatum's a well-liked guy, he's a well-respected guy. So like it's not like he's lacking in that
No,
department either.
true.
So, I think that he's more than in the conversation right now. I would say he's the favorite in this moment.